reflective ball joints, reed racing knuckles, RCV joints,
and the RCV tube seal.
Tube seal. And it's the actual tube seal.
Axle tube seal. On this side, you install the axle shaft first, and then you install the seal, tube seal, over the axle shaft. So,
and that only applies if you are keeping the front axle disconnect, which is what I'm doing.
right. So at this point, we're just trying to seat it in there, and it kind of acting like that's as far in as it really wants to go.
Well, let me look on the other side. See? Yeah, that kind of looks like about, I mean, if you look in the gap right there, you got to come around a little to see the inside the gap. But yeah, that looks maybe needs a little bit more. You're right on the and yeah, these things come pre-greased, obviously.
It's not moving any further.
Okay. Well, once we start tightening everything down. Okay, so just gonna go put that away, and then we're gonna finish the assembly once you can go grab the other parts, because my hands are a little greasy.
So we need the boot.
We need the boot and the bolts, and they're in the box in the back.
Boot and the bolts in the box.
In the back. And then I know some people will put the boot on this first, and try to slide the whole thing through and try to push through, and it wedges a bit, but I think that's right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the thing is, this has to engage into the boot over the lip. But what we found is we can push it together with the unit bearing.
A little bit of anti-seize so that in 6 years when Roy has to take this apart again, it will in fact come apart.
Okay. Before we do that, all right, so this, does that go that way?
180. Openings to the rear.
Yeah, we're on the rear. That's the front. Kenneth, that's the front. That's the rear.
Right. And that goes like that.
Oh, opening to the rear.
Right. Because the caliper sits back here.
Oh, yeah, okay, so that means this has to rotate and face that. Yeah, which is what we did on the other one.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, front, rear. That's how it started. Here, spin me the other way. There went some air.
Yeah, I actually popped off the end of the...
Well, yeah, because we're not all the way seated yet.
There, we're finally starting to draw it in.
Yeah.
The rest of that was just catching up the bolt to the... Okay. The orange boot goes well with the orange knuckle.
It's a slightly different shade.
And yeah, at full tilt, it's still popping out.
Yeah. I think once the steering gets in and the other side hits the steering stop, it won't go that far. Because this is way turned in. Terraflex ball joints, Reed racing knuckles, RCV, CV joints,
And
shafts,
the RCV tube
and
seal.
Tube seal.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right. Now it's very important when you're putting this back together. This shift collar, or this shift fork, has to engage with this shift collar. You just line it up and put it on. And the whole point of this is that it slides, the fork goes back and forth and slides the collar back and forth, engaging and easy for me to say, disengaging the disconnect. Stop touching. I'm trying to line up bolts. And the torque spec on this, right, is 13 foot-pounds.
So a half a dugga.
Yeah. Yeah. 13 foot-pounds really is not a lot. Alright. So this is the axle disconnect skid plate, also by Artec, and give me a little motion to line up bolts. And this is heavier duty than factory. It just helps protect this mechanism a lot better. And let me tell you, putting it on here now with the axle out of the vehicle is a whole lot easier than doing it in the Jeep. So the torque spec on the skid plate bolts is 31 foot-pounds. I don't know if we're going to actually use a torque wrench on this one. There. That's my finely calibrated torque wrench. So that goes underneath. I have the 10mm socket. I found it. Yeah, and so yeah, it does look like there is absolutely no interference at all between the Artec skid plate and the truss.
So we can get ourselves out of.
It's more or less the height we need to be. Yeah. So ran into a small problem, and it shows up when you mix aftermarket parts. Each part individually works fine, but when you put them together, there's just a little bit of interference. So we've got the RCV axle shafts in here that have a nice boot to keep most of the grease in, and we've got our TerraFlex ball joints with the grease zerk that sits up a little higher than factory, and individually they work fine. So with stock axle shafts, this works. With stock ball joints, it works fine, but they're actually touching. And so we put them in per the specs that TerraFlex gave us, and then found out that you get this interference problem if you run these two together. And so what we have to do is we have to pull the ball joints out, the lower ball joints out, spin them 180 degrees and put them back in. So we are just getting to the last bits here. This project took a lot longer than we expected, and it's actually Tuesday. We started on Saturday, and have been working on this. We did get the ball joints straightened out for us. We got them spun around, and you can see up here on the top one is shaped exactly the same. You can see how the zerks point a specific direction, and the TerraFlex instructions say on the bottom ball joint, turn the ball joint around 180 degrees to make getting at the zerks a little easier. Well, unfortunately, that's what interferes. But when we took it apart, we got the ball joint spun around so they both face this direction, and we've got, you know, 1/4 inch of clearance, but clearance is clearance, and so the RCVs are going to work just fine with these TerraFlex ball joints. Yeah, and as of the time when we were filming this, this is not the official fix from TerraFlex, but it was the official fix for TerraFlex for the JK. This is a JL, the newer model, and conversations on the forum with the TerraFlex representative said that that's probably what the instructions are gonna say sometime in the future. You know, this being early August of 2022. Expect to see updates in the instructions if you get them at a later time. Part of all this upgrade, since everything had to come out, went ahead and did an upgraded. I've done the Curry tie rod and drag link. They're fairly similar to the metal cloak. Obviously a little bit different. Not as gold and blingy. But then also the Curry steering stabilizer relocation, which is this right here. It moves the bolt into the track bar, and then has a clamp. And obviously we haven't adjusted anything, and the yellow tape is the big flag that says we haven't filled the diff with oil yet. So just making sure we have a nice obvious indication that we need to get that done before we start driving this. But yeah, we're getting to the point where we're ready to start retorquing all of the suspension bolts. And again, for control arms and things like that, you always put the weight on the suspension, get it to settle, and then you torque everything down. And obviously we're not there yet, but that's on the list, and not a whole lot more. Okay. Don't trip on the extra parts laying on.
Just all the way to the first line. It's out of the way when you go to leave.
So it took a lot longer than we thought it would, but it's all together. Got everything torqued. Still have to adjust the steering stops, which are a cast nub on the steering knuckle, and it's basically grind it down as much as you want, just to adjust how much you steer. And then also I'm going to schedule an alignment because we changed a couple of things.
Say, time for a test drive?
Oh,
Kenneth, you want to say that?
so I guess it's time for a test drive.
for a test drive. However, before we do that,
would
you like to actually
Oh, I forgot the one thing.
The one thing you were supposed to remember, you forgot.
You didn't remind me.
This is what happens when a one-day project becomes, longer
Yeah.
than a 3-hour tour.